What's our intro going to be? We should start by telling everyone that there's 17. It's 17, right? It isn't 19. I keep forgetting.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Coen Brothers. We're going to take a sophisticated look at either 17 or 19 Coen Brothers
You
films.
suck.
I'm Michael Swaim. With me, as always, is my co-host.
Abe Epperson.
That's true.
You douchebag.
That is his full title, Abe Epperson, you douchebag. So please address
fell into that one.
But we're going to try and take a sophisticated deep dive at all of these films.
Yeah.
And we're starting with the first one, which is Blood Simple.
Chronological, baby.
Chronological. And we will be tackling it, as always, from three spectra: diegesis, pedagogy, and howdy do dat.
How'd he do that?
How'd he do that?
How'd he do that? How'd they do that? I don't know.
I know.
We all do
How'd
that.
they do that?
How'd we do that?
How'd we do that? Together.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with diegesis, which is discussing the film itself as if it were a standard review, how it's executed, the craft of it, what happens in the movie. So let's see. Abe, you seem like the type who would have the year. Do you know the year this came out?
I do, 1984.
Well done. Orson Welles'
1984, yeah.
most chilling vision brought to life.
Because it filmed in 1983. That's
Okay.
right. Yeah.
And it sort of started when, or what I read was Sam Raimi, they had the script. They had been industry editors for a long time, Joel and Ethan,
Joel
correct?
was assistant editor for Sam Raimi's films,
Right.
including The Evil Dead.
Yes, and this came out the same year Evil Dead actually came out. And Sam Raimi, who had success doing what we now call like calling dentists, which is getting private investors by
That's right.
cold calling over a long period of time, something Abe and I have never had the balls to do.
Yeah, we're scaled.
Just people who are rich and saying like, do you want to make a movie?
Yeah.
And
Well, it's a different time now because
is.
that before was like this magical thing. Now it's like we all know that it's a terrible investment.
That's public knowledge. The secret is out.
Yeah, the secret's out.
But yeah,
If like return on investment of like films,
Right.
not to say that you shouldn't Patreon us and give
oh
us
yeah,
$5 each.
Well, this
month.
is a bonus series, so there probably already are if they're
Oh,
listening
yeah,
to
huh.
this. Thank you.
Hey everybody, our small beans.
Hey beanies. And they were able to raise $750,000 just by doing cold calls over the course of a year.
Which was half of the budget.
And that was half of the budget, and they were able to make this movie. And just to get you excited, because I know a lot of people haven't seen this one, even Coen Brothers fans, because, of course, it's not the jewel in their crown because they're just getting started. They're just getting ramped up. But I do think it's very, very strong. It shows all the promise of what they're going to become. And it's strictly an independent film made for a very low budget outside of the Hollywood system. And a lot of reviewers now, in retrospect, consider it the greatest independent film ever made. So
Yeah.
it's still great.
And what I love is that, so on the advice of Sam Raimi, the way in which they pitch people is they made like a mock trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought a projector.
Mock Trial with Jay Reinhold.
Mock trial. Mock trial. They brought a projector to people's houses and showed their trailer. And it was just like, it's that shot of the car stopped in the middle of the road and then like has voiceover, another man that he was going to kill, shot. And then it's a shot of like the backlit gun holes on a wall. Like it's just pieces of murder.
Oh, it really is just a trailer. It's not a scene like the Sin City
That's
thing.
how they got their
Okay.
people to invest in it, is that like the painterly aspect that it was. They were like, oh, that will be a good film. I want to see what happens.
Right.
And here's some money so I get to see what happens. Not like they're pitching the story and literally telling people who are their angel investors, so this is the movie, this is how it ends. No, they were just like, check out this trailer.
Yeah.
Don't you want to know how it ends?
Couldn't get that done today and
No,
make
it's
money.
a slightly
but
different situation.
different time. But we're glad it got made because it is really, it was very well selected, I think, because what it boils down to for people who are wildly unfamiliar with it, it's something that the Coens are going to come back to time and again, which is noir with a twist on it.
Crime
In the noir style with some elements that they brought to the table as well.
Also, I believe one of the only Coen Brother films that does not actually have police in it.
Right, yes, whereas the police almost always become involved. That's a budget thing.
Is it?
I think. Well, you could have a police presence, but
that's the true intelligence of this film, I think.
There's only like 4 characters.
There's 4
it's
characters.
A play.
It's a play.
Well, there's 5 if you count Maurice.
But there's only one sequence where it makes it feel like this is like a normal movie. This is a regular movie, which is the first bar scene.
Because they had to
they
fill
have
it with
a
extras.
shit ton of extras. There's like 30, 40 people in that bar. So it makes it feel right off the bat in our first like 25 minutes, we're like, oh, this is like a normal movie. It looks like a normal movie. There's a bunch of people there. There's obviously lighting and all these things that you don't think about. You just feel when you look at the frame. But then the rest of the movie, there's no people. It's just the 4. It's a drama play.
Right. It's interesting because the Coens, the reason they're the greatest filmmakers of all time is the thoroughness of attention to detail at every level and the correct prioritization of goals, I think. And it's interesting to see that applied with complete limitations.
Yep.
This is their first movie. They know if it fails, it'll be really hard to relaunch from square one.
Right.
It's so calculated to be as big as it can be without breaking the bank. And it's literally called Blood Simple because it is it's as basic a story as they could tell because they're just trying to show you what they can do. Mm-hmm. So the general plot is as basic. In fact, there's a song I wanted to mention. Stan Ridgway, one of my favorite guys, has a song called Peg and Pete and Me that is the same plot as this. And it's a 3-minute song. And I mean, just coincident. It's just
hire a private eye to murder.
It's just such a fucking simple. Yeah. Well, it's the plot that the sheriff's trying to imply happened, and then it diverges.
You mean the private investigator?
Right. In the song, whose name is actually Lauren Vesser.
What I didn't know because it's not actually ever said. It's only on his lighter, I think. It says
on
Lauren,
lighter, it says Lauren.
But it's played by Emmett Walsh.
Yes. Right? And it says, let's not get too diverged. I just want to say, so the plot is just that there's a love triangle. There's an old mean guy and his young pretty wife. And he's rich, and she's cheating on him with a young, nice guy who works for him. And he pays someone to try and have them killed, and then stuff spirals out of control.
Right.
And that's it. It's as basic as like a soap opera plot, but it's just so well executed that at every scene, the layering is what got me. I'm like, man, it moves so slow. It's like a big, unwieldy machine where you're like... There's only like 4 elements. How is it getting so detailed? Mm-hmm. It's simple and detailed at the same time, and it's pretty beautiful. And I do want to say Blood Simple, because this confused me, I had to look it up, is an allusion to a Dashiell Hammett novel where he uses blood simple to mean the way people make stupid decisions or their intelligence is completely reduced after they've just done something extremely violent or witnessed something extremely violent. Yeah. And the only reference to it in the movie is Emmett Walsh, the private investigator, Lauren Visser, says, don't go simple on me, to Marty.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But that's the only clue, but that is what it means. So that's a key to the theme of the plot, which is just...
Not diegesis, by the way.
That's true. That's pedagogy for sure. Yeah. Okay. So let's bounce back to what's going on. So yeah, I know his name's Lauren Visser because I looked it up. It does say Lauren on his lighter, which is a key prop. And what I love about that is on the lighter it says Lauren, Elk's Man of the Year.
Yeah.
And the opening narration of this movie is he says, the world's full of complainers, but the fact is there's no guarantees. I don't care if you're president or man of the year. And it's like
man of the year.
And he is man of the year. And he says things can still go wrong.
Right.
So there's masterful foreshadowing all throughout.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Should we just go through the plot? It's pretty quick. Yeah, you got let's lay out the little drama here. You got Ray, played by what's his name? He didn't recur later in the Coen verse.
John Getz.
John Getz, Abby, which is the
Frances McDormand's first role.
Very first role, major feature debut for Frances McDormand. Marty, Julian Marty, who goes by Marty, which I think is just a nice character thing that like he doesn't want to go by Julian because it's so feminine, so he goes by his last name.
Right.
Because he's
to
super
show the
insecure.
insecurity. Yeah, exactly.
That's Dan Hedaya, who does a great job as always. And we got Maurice, and we got the sheriff. Lauren Vasseur.
The private detective, not the sheriff.
I'm sorry. I keep calling him a sheriff, but he's not a sheriff at all. He just wears a cowboy hat and has a gun.
Yeah.
But he's on the wrong side of the law.
He's on like he's a bounty hunter. Yeah.
Yeah, and totally amoral. In fact, I think he has a lot in common with a similarly named Coen character, Anton Chigurh, Lauren Vasseur.
Right.
It's just weird.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that one's lawful evil and one's more like chaotic neutral.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they occupy the same role,
right?
In the story.
Lauren being
chaotic neutral.
Chaotic neutral, right?
Yeah.
Because his main trait is he's gonna fuck all these people over for the maximum profit from the beginning. Yeah. That's all he ever intended to do.
And he doesn't care about the systems of law or whatever. It's all about him.
Yeah. So Ray and Abby are this young couple. Ray works for Dan Hedaya, Marty, at his bar in Texas. Ray and Abby fall in love. They bone. Julian, Marty, he would hate that I call him Julian all the time. But he's dead. Fuck him.
Yeah, also fictional.
Yeah. Marty sends the private detective to take pictures of them boning, which is confirmed. He goes to confront them. Long story short, he actually breaks into her house and like puts his hand over her mouth and drags her into the street. She fucking breaks his finger, kicks him in the balls. He runs away. This inflames him so much that he decides he needs to have them killed. He intentionally wrongly accuses his other bartender, Maurice, of having stolen $10,000 from the safe so that he can give $10,000 to this private detective to kill this couple. The private detective from the beginning plans to kill Dan Hedaya instead and just pretend he killed the couple. So he does poorly doctored photos. Like, I'm surprised that it worked.
Right.
But he like doctors photos to make it look like he shot them to death in bed, but he didn't. He just
no Photoshop
photos.
In 83.
Right. And then when Marty opens the safe to give him his 10 grand, he shoots Marty and takes all the money. Mm-hmm. Unbeknownst to him, because he's been rendered blood simple by doing a murder, I think, he leaves his monogram lighter on the desk. The important point then is that Ray comes to talk to Marty, and all throughout, Ray is actually very forthright. Like, he knows Marty knows that his wife's cheating with him, and he just goes and says, look, Marty, I'm sorry, it's true. I want my last 2 weeks of pay, and then I'll quit and leave. And he's like, no, you're not getting your pay, and if you come back, I'll shoot you. And during that interchange, Marty plants it in his head that he's like, she's just a whore, and she'll do this to you. And what's really going to be fucking funny is when she looks at you and says, what? I don't know, Ray. I didn't do nothing funny.
Right.
That's fucking funny.
Which is crazy because it's such a snap judgment on his part. And I want to point out that our two protagonists, Abby and Ray, like, they never actually see. There's never, like, they're next to each other eventually by the end of the film, which will come back later. But, like, still at this point, they have not actually seen the detective.
They only see the detective in the opening shot and when she feels that like they're being followed, and they slam on the brakes and a bug passes them and they see his silhouette.
And he's observed them from afar,
many
but
times.
They haven't met. He's just witnessing actions, which is like not a complex tale. It's basically, I saw you boning a guy, and this guy is also, you're supposed to be in union with this other guy, so you're a liar.
So he's going to kill this guy.
So it kind of tells you exactly what's going on in the detective's mind. Like, he feels like he can make a snap judgment at any time on who anyone is at any time. Like, I know exactly who that person is because I've seen that side of the law.
He's very confident,
yeah.
And it is a key point. I should go back and say that when he kills Dan Hedaya, he does it intentionally with a pearl-handled pistol that he stole from Frances McDormand's purse.
Yeah.
Because obviously, what I love about another thing about Coen's is they leave the right things unsaid. You can figure out what the private detective intended to do.
Right.
Even though it doesn't work out, and he never tells anyone what his plan was.
Right.
You can put it together that his plan was to make it look like
Yojimbo that shit, right?
Right. He wants to set up a crime scene whereby it looks like Frances McDormand killed Dan Hedaya because she wants to run away with Ray. Then when shit spirals out of control further, and he feels he has to kill Ray, this is a thing I only caught this time because I did internet research. He crushes Ray's skull with a walrus-shaped piggy bank, and I didn't notice this, but the only other time you see that
In
is
her apartment?
It's in Abby's apartment, so
Yep.
it's her thing. So
Literally breaking the bank.
so he again was just doubling down on his plan, which is to make it look like Abby did it. So I guess
Right.
now he's going to try and make it look like she had a spat with
He
Ray and
obviously
ran off
stole
with the money.
it. Yeah, in order to manifest this kind of narrative that once again the police would buy.
Right.
Because he had been on that side, because ex-cop kind of idea. Once they see all they have their checklist, once they see all of it, they'll just stop looking into the investigation because he
Right.
knows that he's been on that side, and he said, "Oh, okay, so someone got jealous and someone killed someone. All right, all lines up."
And because they never actually see the private detective, basically the plot functions the same as like a sitcom farce, because
Right.
I'm also watching Frasier right now, and it reminds me of every episode of Frasier is just the same
Comedy
thing.
of errors kind of thing.
It's just the same thing. Separate the characters into separate rooms. Tell
Make
one
them
group
think something.
Niles is scared sad because it's his aunt's funeral. Tell the other group through a misunderstanding. Niles is excited because his wedding's coming up. Put them back in the main room and have them say lines that go either way, like, "Aren't you excited for all the flowers?" "Oh, I guess so."
And to
And that's actually what this movie is.
Yeah.
Because you can slowly piece together, Abby thinks Ray killed Dan Hedaya, and Ray
Right,
thinks Abby killed Dan Hedaya,
yeah.
and that undermines their relationship completely, yet they never actually tell each other what they think or compare notes.
Right.
It's never said aloud that they don't understand what's going on. And that, I think, is the triumph of the Coens showing, look, we're not going to be ambitious with many, many things to prove, but one of the things we'll prove is no dialogue, clear actions, you know what's happening every step of the way, like subtext is blaring at you through the screen.
Right.
You know we're good directors.
What
This
I
is
also
we can
love
bring.
is that I actually, because it's been such a long time since I rewatched this film, I thought I had invented the idea in my head that the idea of like off to the side at night murder was Fargo. And I was like, but wasn't that in Blood Simple? No, they wouldn't do it twice. And they totally just did it twice.
They did.
The only
It also-
difference is
yeah.
in Fargo, it's a little bit more elaborate, I'd say. Like you're a little bit more with the struggle of someone dying as opposed
Right.
to just witnessing an event from afar. But it was just crazy that like that's their like sixth movie, I want to say. Within the first six movies, within almost 10 years of each other, they're just like, let's just do that scene again.
More or less, and we'll get to Miller's Crossing soon.
Right.
It's not dissimilar to the famous Totoro scene in terms of the tone and the emotions, but
Oh, yeah.
let's talk about that scene because it's probably the most famous sequence from the movie. It's 13 minutes with no dialogue.
Oh, so good.
And essentially what it comes down to is, as we said, Lauren Visser, the private detective. And there's a lot of echoes of their future stuff, dude. Like, he's a private detective casing the place in a bug. That happens in Lebowski.
That's true.
And
That's true.
and there's the Lauren Visser, Anton Chigurh connection.
I don't know why I didn't
think.
catch that. Yeah.
So they don't mind borrowing from themselves for sure, cast alone. But so yeah, what happens is after Lauren shoots Dan Hedaya, Julie and Marty, what's his name? Ray comes to try and steal his last 2 weeks' pay from the
Right.
cash register, but it's empty because everything's been moved into the safe already. He goes in to check on the safe to see if it might be open. He sees Dan Hedaya's dead. He sees Frances McDormand's pistol on the floor. He immediately assumes she did it to try and get them away from Marty, because Marty is a dangerous guy. And he basically decides that to protect this woman he's in love with, he has to dispose of the body. Without asking anyone or telling her, he just decides that. So he scrubs the blood up, takes Marty in the car.
I think
in
that's the
back
Blood
seat.
Simple thing that we're coming back to, is that he's like a rat in a cage. He's essentially just thinking, I don't know, like, what is it? Because they don't know that side of the law. They're like, what is it that would incriminate me?
It's a really awesome sequence craft-wise because the Motown song, Same Old Song, we'll talk about, I'm sure repeatedly, is used as
Right.
like a linchpin in this movie.
Yeah.
It's the same old song, which of course is a resonant lyric because this is a story you've heard 1,000
As
times
told as-
before,
yeah,
but
as
they're
old as
going
time.
to tell it better. Like they're going to refresh it by how good they are because they're trying to show off.
Just like, welcome to the scene,
Exactly.
Coen Brothers.
But yeah, it would be like making a movie called Back to Basics, motherfuckers, and Meat and Potatoes movie. But Maurice, the bartender, constantly brings women back to the bar at closing time to dance and make out and probably fuck on the bar. We don't know. But he is there that night while Ray is scrubbing blood. We hear same old song blasting only through the wall. So it's just such a great, he's in like this dark red room scrubbing blood, and there's this echoey blaring Motown that sounds creepy, as opposed to the first time we were in the bar, the Motown song coming on brought the whole bar to life and made everything feel happy and alive. Now we hate this song. It's like, you got to get out of here, man.
I want to take a moment to talk about the lighting of that scene in particular, because as a visual motif, obviously blood, red, not that hard to, like connect it.
Land
so,
on.
Barry Sonnenfeld, who did Raising Arizona and Miller's Crossing as well, and then kind of went off and did his own thing, and he became a director. He's director of like Addams Family and stuff like that. Very good cinematographer. No Roger Deakins, who we'll learn later in these podcasts, is like the all-star. Just won the Oscar, I heard.
Finally, for Blade Runner 2049, which is a classic.
But he shot all of them. But Barry Sonnenfeld,
it's a classic son of a woman situation.
Is no scrub, dude. This guy knows what he's doing.
Behind the camera, yeah.
He used a lot of headlights and like red lamps in the bar and through street windows. And it's just anytime there's red, I think it's that they're immersed in this bloodlust. So anytime we're going to quote someone being blood simple, they're usually identified by having like the main key light, meaning for people who don't know lighting, like your main light, the light that lights most of the face is a good example, or like most of the wall, most of the scene is usually a red, and it's always the same like crimson, or I guess like scarlet red.
It's a dark room red, and what they get out of that, which is amazing. I want to call out 2 points that I thought were the best of that, and I agree. That's exactly how it's used, obviously intentionally. When Dan Hedaya is getting the money from the safe, it's Emmett Walsh, the private detective, is not on camera, but you know he's about to shoot him in the back.
Right.
And they cut to this intense shot of Hedaya's face with red washed over it. And that is Emmett Walsh. That moment is him deciding, I'm going to shoot him right now.
He just, it's
like his rage off camera is coloring the frame. Yeah.
Right.
And then the second one is literally Lauren Vasseur again in an actual dark room when he's developing photos. He goes for smoke, and that's the moment he realizes, I left a lighter with my name on it at the goddamn crime scene.
Right.
Which, of course, is going to flood you with that adrenaline,
in other words,
panic. And they get diegetic red light because he's in a dark room. It's great.
The remnants of my failure, the result, or like the what will incriminate me, in other words, is left in that room, which is full of red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason it got left there is because he told Marty as an alibi, while I'm killing the couple, go away for a couple days and go fishing. Marty comes back with 3 dead fish, which I think obviously foreshadows there will be 3 deaths in this movie.
Or it's a red herring.
Because the red light on it?
Yeah.
I think they were trout. And this, another great just like scene work moment is he looks at the photos and sees that they're dead, and he says to the not the sheriff, he says to the private eye, do you want some of these fish? And he pushes them back, and he goes, they appear to be dead, yes. And he pushes the fish back, which is like, later that he's lying. Right. So he's both saying, hey, I'm not lying. I'm saying, yeah, they certainly look dead, and I reject the dead bodies. Like, I get them away from me.
Yeah,
because I'm distancing myself.
I don't want the
from
result of the murder. I just want it to occur, kind of thing.
But in that exact action, he pushes the fish back, and he happens to push the fish on top of his lighter. Right. So by refusing the result of his sin, he brings it upon himself inescapably. Right. Because that's the action that... So
you reap what you sow.
Exactly.
And also, like, you're blind if you choose not to see, and if you've made your mind up about someone or something, you will not necessarily see the result of what you're doing.
Exactly.
Because you're blinded to the reality of the situation. In other words, we're all just a bunch of people walking and talking in
making
rooms.
assumptions in our tunnel.
Yeah, and if you think that it's any specific thing, if you're like, no, that those types of people are horrible,
right,
then you're missing the point. You're not seeing you are full of bloodlust. You're simple.
Doesn't matter if you're Pope or man of the year.
Man of the year.
Things can go wrong. Tell your neighbors about your problems and watch them fly. Now in Russia, they got it all worked out, so everyone pulls for each other.
Like what?
That's the theory, anyway.
Well, yeah. What do you think the meaning of the Russian line is?
I think that's for pedagogy, sir. We're still in diegesis.
Let's get there fast.
All
It's
right.
my favorite part of Coen Brothers movies.
Well, we have no time limit on this.
Yeah.
This is a labor of love. So, yes, all of that shit is awesome. I think it's definitely, if you've seen A Simple Plan, it's the same themes. It's the unknowing ripples of your actions. It's a crime spiraling out
Which
of
is
control.
Raimi saying, oh shit, they made Fargo really good.
Yeah,
I want to
true.
make it some.
Yeah. That's true. Oh yeah, I
came
forgot
out post-Fargo.
I forgot Simple Plan is Raimi. Simple Plan is very good though.
Yeah.
So anyway, we wanted to talk about this linchpin sequence at the midpoint that everyone loves to talk about. 13 minutes, no dialogue other than the radio. Ray is driving down a midnight highway with Marty's dead body in the back seat, and suddenly Marty takes a breath. So he wasn't dead.
It's so haunting.
And yet it's simple. I like that they're also saying
It's like a ghost story.
We're not going to give you any Lego bricks that you haven't seen in other movies. It's going to be very comfortable. Guy you thought was dead wakes up. These are basic things, but we're going to do it good so you know we're good.
Yeah.
So what I love is also the way they capture the noir feel is they specifically chose locations that almost look black and white even though they aren't.
It's usually under the cover of darkness, so that's what gives you that contrast.
With headlights or a single bright source.
Like the bar, if you notice, except for the red lights, in the same way of the tail lights amongst the darkness on the road, all the lights are off.
Yeah.
But this red light is on. It's like, who orients a bar like that? Who has like, well, here's my lights to clean up. I'll turn that off and I'll keep on this just the red light that we usually use for bars because you want to get intimate and like there's like a hidden kind of desire of everyone who goes to bars and fucking
or just boozing.
Or in this
There's
case,
just alcoholics.
In this case, the haunting realization of like I called it a ghost story. It's very much that his fit, like blood drains from his face as soon as he hears that breath.
Oh, it's great, and they've done a great job establishing through action, not dialogue. Pay attention, every other filmmaker.
Yeah,
that Ray is a good guy with a strong conscience who's wrapped up in some heavy shit. Not because anyone says, Ray, you're such a good guy, but because Dan Hedaya told the private detective, incinerate their bodies. Then we see him with the same choice. He has a dead body of someone he hates and he doesn't want to get caught.
Right.
And he considers incinerating him, can't do it, and instead just burns the bloody clothes and takes him to give him a proper burial.
Right.
So literally in this case, the fact that the guy has a conscience is going to fuck him.
Which I love because, I don't know, this may be stretching, but I think there's something about this film about I love just the concept of burning the clothes because it's like it's the fabric they put on the problem. Like clothing is what hides our shame, so to speak. And in the same way with the fish, it's the newspaper that covers the lighter. It's not the fish.
Right.
It's what they're adorned in. It's the thing that we use to hold the fish so we don't get our hands all fishy. And so he's trying to cover up by not burning the bodies because that would be like he feels that's going too far. But he'll burn the clothes because they're indicative of the crime.
Event, right.
But at the same time, not truly covering up your tracks correctly.
Whereas Julian/Marty, of course, is totally willing to be like, yeah, burn the bodies.
Yeah.
I don't feel guilt about this
am
decision
blood
and I
simple.
want it gone from me. Yeah. So because Ray's a good guy, he lets Marty live and Marty goes, And it's great because it's one of the most realistic reactions I've ever seen that you don't, up until 6 Feet Under, where the mom finds out the dad's dead in the pilot. Fucking that reaction gets me every time. But no other movie ever does this, and it's so realistic and relatable. He goes, and it smash cuts to Ray sprinting away from the car into the dark, and then having to stop and like touch his head and pull himself together and be like, I can't just run into the woods. Yeah, I have to do something about
I realize
this.
like my impulse is to get like kind of like
is to like just escape.
You know what? Well, that's the thing that I love about this is it's like the stories they tell about like when a fox gets caught in a trap, they will gnaw off their leg. Right? It's the same kind of... He wants to get away, just like the fox who's trying just to run and run and run. And then they sit there and they realize they're caught. And then they have that slow, horrible realization that
they have to do.
I'm going to just have to bite my leg off. And that's what him sitting there with his, breath, like backlit so you can see how he's thinking.
How he's breathing hard and thinking hard.
Yeah, exactly.
And incidentally, this scene takes place right beneath 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri.
No, that's true.
Only in the sense that any location that's not Ebbing, Missouri is outside it. So I assume this is outside Ebbing, Missouri.
I actually haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to at some point.
Well, it's a Francis, but it's not a Coen. So different podcast.
I know.
Anyway, we could cover it on Frame Rate though. So he finally pulls himself together. Such a good scene. Walks back to the car and the back seat's empty.
Which is just like comedic, like that's just Looney Tunes version.
And they're so good at every possible way to raise tension, and they'll hit this hard again when No Country rolls around. In fact, the scene where the private eye is sneaking through the house and the light comes on under the doorway, very reminiscent of the hotel scene from No Country.
Were you? I was just going to mention, if you were Anton Sugar, you would have not had any of these problems, because like a psychopath, you would have just ended it there and done your job well. But because you second guessed yourself, because you're a good guy and you're a fish out of water, you're not good at your job of murdering someone because you have a morality.
Because you'd never murdered someone
So in other words, murder is for,
people who are ready to murder.
And anyone else don't murder.
So to raise the stakes even more, we already know that in order to dispose of the gun, he was going to bury it with the dead body. So he put Francis McDormand's gun in Marty's coat pocket.
By the way,
Marty doesn't know because he just regained consciousness, but he has a gun and we know that. So brilliant. To double down, like to establish Ray even further, I think, as a conscionable man, he takes a shovel out of his car and raises it. And you're like, oh, so he's going to go for the old head smash. And he can't do that either.
No.
So you're like, this guy's challenge is that he's a good guy, but he has to murder this guy now.
Or he will not survive. And we know,
So a truck is coming, of course, to make tension even higher. He has to bundle the sick, like vomiting blood Julian into the car again for a second. And then he finally decides what to do. Again, no one has spoken. He just decides to go into this big barren field and dig a grave. He drops Marty in the grave. He slowly starts to bury him.
He looks dead.
Marty is like fumbling around, just moaning and shit plaintively. His hand finds the gun. He draws the gun. He raises the gun, which we know is mostly empty, but Ray does not. Again, like the whole movie is the audience knows.
Good.
The audience is way ahead of all the characters, which is so great feeling.
Because it's that dramatic irony bit. It's the idea that, like, nothing to us is off screen, but to them, it's all off screen.
And therefore, they all think they're making reasonable decisions, but every decision is based on faulty information in every case.
Blammo. Nope.
Yep. So he pulls the trigger 3 times, and it clicks empty 3 times. And Ray, shakingly reaches out, takes the gun, and very quickly finishes burying him alive. And it's really horrible. Yeah. Obviously.
Like, and just the idea of someone who's like, I'm dying and this is going to be the most horrible thing. I don't want to do it. Oh my God, I have an out. And to be denied the out.
Yeah.
it's like insult to injury. It's
You're like, why did God put a loaded gun in
Exactly.
my pocket if it's going to be empty?
Yeah. Like, what does anything mean? And it's as we see over the course of the career, I used to think that they got increasingly nihilistic, but I think they've always been kind of nihilistic in the way in which they treat like Providence.
I think they are nihilistic, and yet in the beginning of their career had a strong feeling. You know, they call Raising Arizona a sellout movie, which
Right.
we'll get to in more detail. And they don't mean that it's bad. We'll discuss that next episode.
Right.
But by that, I think they mean they know that they're playing in a universe of film that has morality rules that they don't believe are actually true.
Yeah.
But they're willing to do that because they're the kind of movies people like.
Yeah.
And then now that when they get to the phase in their career where they're like, no, we can do whatever the fuck they want.
You get a No Country.
They'll even take something fairly uplifting like True Grit and be like, and suck all the meaning out of it to show how nihilist it is.
Right.
Because that's, I think what they really believe. But that's for later. Recurring themes.
Yeah. And I mean, Hudsucker, which is early in their career, is also probably a sellout movie to them in the same regard, where it plays by the rules of, if you're good, this neoclassical kind of justice, this idea that if you try hard and you do good, you will get paid dividends.
Right. Which I don't think they believe in the movies that they make that are clearly a raw reflection of the world as they see it.
Definitely not this movie.
Right. So everyone's favorite sequence has come to an end now.
Yeah.
Ray calls Abby and says, it's okay, I took care of everything. I did it. We're in the clear. This, of course, makes her think, oh, you killed Marty? Like, I didn't ask you to do that. And he comes back to her place. They decide it's too dangerous where they are, and they have to move. Oh, he doesn't want to sleep in bed with her anymore. It's obviously tense, right? Their relationship's being undermined by everything that's going on. They move to a different apartment that happens to have a giant bay window on one side. That will be important later. Okay, let's talk about the gun.
Okay.
Because the thing you were going to say about the gun is different than what I'm going to say. So say your thing, and then I'll say my thing. Because the story of the gun is fucking phenomenal.
Hold on. Let me pull it up because I actually wrote it out.
Okay, well, I'll say my thing first then, because
All right.
I know what you're going to say, and it's different.
Yep.
I think this is one of the only movies, if not the only movie I can think of, where the gun is handled absolutely realistically, meaning you, the audience, literally know how many bullets are in the gun and what chamber they're in at every given point in the film. Because the arc is the sheriff is the first one to pull the gun out of her purse and show it to the audience. He checks how many bullets are in it, and we see that there are 3. He turns it until it is loaded, meaning the next shot will fire.
Yeah.
Then the gun ends up being fired to kill Marty. Mm-hmm. Then Marty pulls the trigger 3 times and each chamber is empty,
yeah.
which means you, the audience, now know that it
The
had...
next...
Sorry. Also, we forgot when Ray is searching the crime scene, he kicks the gun and it fires.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So you now know the sequence
Yeah.
of bullets went bullet, bullet, empty, 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 and the last chamber must be a bullet.
Yeah.
So now for the last act of the movie, you know, which no one else knows because the gun has changed hands several times, that there's one and only one shot left and it's the next shot.
Yeah.
That is a triumph to me to accomplish that level of knowledge of what's going on for me.
Well, it all folds back into, and like obviously everyone has kind of heard the screenwriting trope of Chekhov's gun, right? Just the idea that in first act, if you reveal like there's a gun in a drawer, that means someone is probably going to die from this gun. It's going to be a major participant in the drama and crisis of the eventual story.
Which is why, incidentally, storytellers eventually invented the red herring, which is the defensible practice of throwing a bunch of random crap out to make sure that people don't know what's going to happen.
It's a football reverse. You fake giving it to the running back and give it to the wide receiver kind of thing. But here's what I think.
He beats someone to death with the gun at the end.
Yeah, and it's done in a lot of, almost every film noir ever has had some form of it. It doesn't always have to be a gun. It's a device. But here's what I think makes this movie a triumph. It's that I think it's the first verbal, which is crazy because it's right off the bat. It's like if you look at the Coen Brothers' career, we're talking first line of any movie that they've made feature-wise is about that gun. You don't see it. you just hear Abby talk about it.
The very first line of the movie is Abby saying, and I bought a pearl-handled pistol just in case.
So it's a verbal Chekhov's gun. So you go, okay, so this movie's about a particular gun. No, they're real guns in the movie that matter. That gun, though, does. And then what makes it amazing is that in a Chekhov's gun, like, it's always the determinism of, is it loaded or is it unloaded? Okay, it's loaded. So that means that there's 6 bullets. Okay, that means that anytime anyone's going to fire, that gun now is the crisis. In this movie, it's both a Chekhov's gun and a red herring.
Right, they've made every chamber matter. Every chamber determines an event, not just the gun one time as an object.
Yeah.
That's what's brilliant. And imagine, and it's, as you said, it's this nihilistic idea of, look how fucking random this shit is. Mm-hmm. Imagine if he had spun the chamber one less time. Then it would have gone bullet, 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 empty, 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 and Ray would be dead in a field.
Yeah.
Like, everything would be different.
But it happened. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention that I love is that because this is the device that is like the form of mortality, right? This is as
the gun takes every life that
your
gets
morality
taken.
doesn't matter. The gun's morality doesn't matter because the gun is just a vessel. It's a tool.
Well, that's not true. The sniper rifle takes Ray's life later.
Oh, that's true. But each of the members of the 4 protagonists at one point fire that gun.
Right. Whether it's empty or full, they each fire at once.
Pull a trigger,
which is
with
great.
The intent to kill.
Ray's is he kicks it and it fires. He didn't have the intent to kill.
Yeah, that's true.
His intent to kill comes in the burying alive.
It comes in the burying alive. Yeah. He had to warm up to the idea of murder.
Well, that's what's crazy to me is burying someone alive seems way harder than shooting them once in the head.
Well, that's because it's not his morality is not about whether or not Marty can take it. It's about if he can take it. So covering it up and burying it and running away is what he wants.
And it's right. And it's in a moment where he's not making the best decisions because he's blood simple.
Yeah.
By the way, the blood simple term, the Dashiell Hammett novel it comes from, is the one that they adapted into Miller's Crossing. So they fucking love this novel. We should probably read it at some point.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. So their relationship's getting undermined. The sheriff goes back to the office, Marty's office, where the safe is, and basically realizes, well, I'm fucked because someone came here and moved the body. Everything's moved around. Mm-hmm. I don't know who it is, but someone knows what the fuck happened. And it wasn't the cops because I haven't heard any chatter or whatever. He decides to literally sit there with a hammer and just try to break the safe open in case there's extra money inside, I guess, presumably, or to get the photos back.
Once again, simple solution.
It's probably to get the photos back because Marty had a copy of the photos that would incriminate him as having shot them, the doctored photos.
Right.
So as he's sitting there banging away with a hammer, Frances McDormand comes because she's suspicious and wants to know what the fuck is going down and wants to talk to Marty. He hides. Once again, as Abe said, no one ever sees Lauren Vasseur except for Dan Hedaya.
And in fact, Abby thinks that it's Marty.
That it's Marty. Right. Which puts it in her mind that Marty's alive. Then they both return to their new apartment. She's there. Ray's there. The sheriff calls them. The sheriff. The private eye calls them. And we know that the reason he's calling is to confirm that that's where they are. Because he's obviously done some off-screen detective work. Mm-hmm. So he calls. We, the audience, know it's him because we know Marty's dead. He's the only other interested character. But he just breathes and then hangs up.
Which is Rear Window, which, by the way, if you look at that apartment, that has like the same setup of
the Rear Window setup.
Alfred Hitchcock movie.
Nice.
So that's a clear nod.
Yeah.
Granted, it's to an open street, like their view is obscured, but like that big window near the bed kind of thing. Yeah.
So Ray's like, we got to get out of town. We got to go. And I forgive you for killing. But he doesn't say it. He's like, I don't care what you've done. We just got to go. That's the important thing. Then Abby is like, no, I don't care what you've done. And he's like, don't fuck with me. I know what you did. And she says the one thing she's not supposed to say that Dan Hedaya said she would, which is, what do you mean, Ray? I ain't done nothing funny. And now Ray's clear belief is,
God, Marty was
right. This was all a setup. She just wants to get the money have me go to jail for killing her husband and then she's free and
my
has the
motivation
money
for all these things
was that I really loved her
on a sand
and he thought
built on a swamp.
Oh,
Yeah.
she didn't love me back. She's been playing me.
She's been playing, yeah.
So without confirming this, they're just like both wary of each other because then he goes, what? After all the shit I did for you, Abby, he was alive when I buried him. So now she's like, oh, this dude I love is a fucking psychopath.
Yeah, even though we, once again, the dramatic irony, have seen all of his choices and be like, if I were in that situation, would I act that way? I'd hope not. I don't want to be in that situation, but at least he isn't a psychopath.
Right.
Because he had to think about it and turmoiled over it like a normal person in a situation that you could witness. But she doesn't witness that. She just sees the sentence of, I buried him alive.
He goes, Abby, I buried him alive. And the subtext in his mind is, don't you see how much I love you?
And
but the
she
subtext she hears is, bitch, I buried someone alive.
I will kill you. Yeah.
So they're both now scared of each other or like think each other are really bad people. And so Ray does detective work of his own, goes back to the crime scene one last time, which we visit a lot, and finds the doctored photos of him and Abby appearing to be dead. And it's unclear because he never speaks. You don't know whether this means he figured out the whole situation. That's unlikely because he would be really smart to do that.
But he knows that.
Now he knows some weird shit is going on and there's more people involved than just Marty.
Because Marty wasn't shot dead when I buried him.
And now here's these photos that obviously someone else made and they're of us in bed. Why is this happening?
Yeah.
So he knows there's still danger out there. So he goes back
He's just paranoid now.
Against his own best wishes because he kind of feels weird about Abby. He goes back to the apartment just to warn her that she's not safe there anymore. While he's there, there's that phone call with the heavy breathing.
Mm-hmm.
She says, it's him. It must be him. And he goes, who? And she goes, Marty. Because she thinks Marty's still alive.
She doesn't know she doesn't know there's a private detective even exists.
Right.
So
and when he says, I buried him alive, Abby, she's not even sure who he's referring to.
Right.
So she thinks that that's Marty on the phone, which he takes to mean, oh, okay. Now you're just at the stage of bullshitting me to my face.
Right.
Because we both know Marty's dead and you're saying he's alive.
Yeah.
All right. And he goes, all right, whoever was on the phone, obviously this whole point was to get me out of the picture and run away with him. Just take the money and run away with him.
I need to be away from a window kind of thing.
Right. He's like, I want you to be happy. I did love you, but fine, fucking go. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he goes, look, the point is you just can't be here because there's a giant window here. And she goes, what do you mean? And he goes, there's no curtains on the window. Look, I know it's hard to trust me, but I love you and you just got to trust me. And then he gets shot through the heart.
Yeah, with the rifle, which then
proving that he was right. There's a sniper across the street.
And then Abby grabs the knife from his pockets, right?
Yep, he has a pocket knife.
Yeah, and hides in the bathroom. And then in the same way, rear window, we get our murderer who slowly arrives and gets in there.
And now
she thinks it's Marty still because she thinks Marty killed
That's
Ray.
the final punchline of the movie. It's so great.
Yeah. And so the detective enters the bathroom and he's basically just, I'm going to kill you and cover up all of this mess.
Right. And as we said, he crushes Ray's skull with something of hers to make it look like she did it.
Right.
Presumably he'll just hide her body and make it look like she ran away with the money.
Yep.
I did want to point out the last 15 minutes just becomes a straight up like real-time survival horror scene, which they don't do that often. It felt like a scene from Panic Room or something.
Yep.
And they do all the classic maneuvers.
Well,
she shows resourcefulness because she takes off her shoes and uses them to break the light bulb on the ceiling so he can't snipe her anymore, which is why he's forced to come to the building.
We often see the other side of that, like the manipulation of the person who's acting on the crime. Like if you go back to No Country for Old Men, we do have that sequence with Sugar where he actually all right, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to shoot the doorknob through and that's going to get me in and then I'll take him out. Like you don't see the other side of that coin, but you do in this film. Yes. Because you see it from her perspective.
This is the prey being resourceful to survive, which you don't usually see in the Coens.
So what happens is he finds a bathroom empty and the window open, which makes him think she ran away.
Or to the next window over because it's too high to jump from, which is accurate. She did. She's in the adjoining room.
So he reaches out the window and she takes the knife.
Yeah, he reaches out one window and into the adjoining window to open it.
Blammo.
Yeah, she pins him to the windowsill.
And then one of my favorite performances that guy's ever done.
The
just punching just fucking through the wall.
Yeah, so the way Lauren decides he has to deal with this. Oh, incidentally, I like that he searches Ray's dead body for his lighter, saying, I believe you have something in mind.
Trying to cover up.
And can't find it. Because it's still under the dead fish.
Yeah.
Like, he even killed Ray for no reason. He could have just recovered the lighter, but he couldn't find it.
He didn't know that that's where he left it.
Right. He forgot where he left it. So he is punching through the plywood wall of this shitty hotel so that he can reach his Hulk-like arm through and pull the knife out of his other hand so that he can be free again. And that buys her enough time to come out of the bathroom, around to his side, and get her gun, which we know has one and only one shot, and it's chambered now.
I'm not afraid of you, Marty.
And she shoots once through the door. It kills the guy instantly. Not instantly, but I mean, it's fatal. And the last line, not the last line, but her last line is, I'm not afraid of you, Marty.
And he starts laughing.
And he starts laughing because he knows how funny this fucking movie was.
And do you want to say the final line?
No, you got it.
Well, ma'am, if I see him, I'll sure give him the message.
And the look on her face is legitimately like, wait, who the fuck is that? Like, she doesn't know who that was. Yeah.
The only plot problem is that this realization brings that up. It's like the scab that I keep needing to pick at, which is that when he walks into the bathroom the first time, Detective says, I don't know what you two thought you were going to pull off or something. So either she didn't hear that, or she thinks that he's still Marty, even though the voice is off.
It's slightly different.
And then here, though, I guess maybe it's just proximity. She then realizes that's not his voice. Like, that's one weirdness that I noticed.
That's true. You could chalk it up to the blood simple effect, by which I mean the only dream sequence we've seen is her seeing Marty tell her.
She's blind. Yeah.
Well, it's great because Marty, I believe, this is my interpretation, and now we're moving into pedagogy.
Oh, man.
My interpretation is we see the sheriff. The sheriff is supremely confident that everything he does is going to work out throughout the movie. At the end of the movie, he dies in a way that will teach him the lesson that he shouldn't have been so confident, right? So my belief is that his opening narration is coming to us from beyond the grave. Because the opening narration seems like he understands. He says, you can be man of the year and shit can still go to hell. And he's man of the year. So I feel like he's speaking to us with the knowledge of the movie's events have happened already. Right. And in the same way, so he speaks to us from life and death. And the only other person who does that is Marty.
Right.
And he does the same thing twice. In life, he tells Ray the thing that plants doubt in his head. And after he's dead, he appears to Abby in a dream and says, you know, Ray's just a psycho. He's just going to fucking kill you and run away. He plants the seed in her head. And I love just a little symbolic turn. He says, you left your weapon behind, which is a clue for her brain to remember that her pearl handle pistol is missing. But also, instead of throwing her pistol, he actually throws her makeup compact as if to say, you're just shallow and you're using your feminine wiles to manipulate everyone. You know, that's her own guilt that she could have about herself.
That's what I want. That's to me what I think that not hidden, because I don't think that there's any agenda that's hidden in a Coen Brothers film. They're very specific.
They want you to get it.
They want you to get it, but they're famous for, in interviews, being like, what's the symbolism of this mean? Like they're on Elvis Mitchell's The Treatment or something where it's like, let's do a deep dive. We're not just going to ask you, like, how was the set? We're going to ask you, like, so you do this movement and you hang on this shot. What does that shot mean to you? And they're like, I don't know. And they're like, is that a symbolic effort? And they're like, I don't know. Is it? You know, like they're very protean in their navigation of their own work.
Abe and I have come to the conclusion that in our opinion, the level of intentionality is so thick that it must be that they are just lying or refusing to say because they want their audiences to do the work.
Yeah. And so here's what I think that
because in interviews they've said shit like, oh, Barton Fink, we just wrote it stream of consciousness in order. None of the stuff means anything.
Yeah.
And you're like, bullshit,
No,
dude.
the mosquito matters,
It
you
means
fucking
shit.
piece of shit. It's not just a fucking mosquito. It's LA, and you know what you're doing.
You bloodsuckers.
The background is literally a shot of the beach. Anyway, we'll talk about that on the Barton Fink podcast. But so here's what I think, because obviously we've talked about like kind of like what I call the surface area of symbolism, the first kind of like, oh, this is what this means, which is bloodlust, blood simple. It's in the name. We espoused it in this podcast.
And
you can't work if you're a psychopath, and you shouldn't murder if you're a moral person. And
I really do think another subtext of the film is literally, look at our fucking wicked ass debut and how good filmmakers we are. It comes through in this movie that they're trying to show off.
Here's
to make
what
a
I
big
think
splash.
the true, I don't say true as in meaning like it's more important, but like the next level of symbolism to me is that the true people who are your sins are visited upon are not you, but are other people. In other words, the two people who committed the original crime of adultery are the ones who actually, like, Francis McDormand has to live with it, and Ray has to absolutely, like, he changes. He's now, like, I mean, he's dead,
And
but
from
like,
the
if
moment
he were to
right.
live, he would be eternally altered.
Right.
So they have their own sins and they get their comeuppance, so to speak. But the two people who aren't really invested in the original sin, in other words, the private detective and Marty, they are the ones who actually get, like, they're in the blast radius of this problem. So it's like your sins that you commit, yeah, there's like a justice for you, but if you commit a sin, you also have to deal with the repercussions of affecting everyone around you. And that's what I think that the bloodlust and the blood simplicity is.
And it is really interesting that the quote unquote good two both commit actual murder, is standing there and kill someone. The bad two, I mean, the private detective does because he ends up shooting Marty.
Yeah.
But for the first act and a half, Marty, and I'm not saying this doesn't make him a worse guy, because they are the bad guys.
Yeah, they are.
But in a what's the difference between culpability of intention and culpability of result?
Yes.
Marty paid a shitty hitman to try and kill them, and the hitman had no intention of ever actually killing them.
Not a good guy, yeah.
But like, he always intended to not really kill them. So their guilt is actually weirdly deferred. Like,
exactly.
Lauren Vasseur is such a piece of shit. He was never planning to commit murder. Does that make him less of a bad guy than this good man who buried a dude alive, though?
Yeah.
But we saw 5 times what a good guy Ray is. Does that offset that he buried someone alive?
And so basically the logline of what I'm saying is sin invites sin as the corollary, like basically what is, I think what they're trying to say in this world is not that you get justice based off your actions. Once again, I still think that they're nihilistic filmmakers in that regard. Like, they don't have poetic justice. But it is true that if you are a bad person and you hang around bad people, bad things might happen to you. Or if you're a good person, bad things might still happen to you.
And they might not.
But
right.
the likelihood increases if you
We live in a probabilistic universe.
Yes.
Exactly, yeah. And I've heard from soldiers and read, accounts, a lot of people are around gunfire a lot more than we are blessed to be, that like someone can sweep an AK-47 across a crowd, and on some days they'll hit 20 people, on some days they won't hit anyone. Like, it's chance is chance, and it always has a hand.
The universe
in
is
everything.
chaos, and it's just molecules bumping into each other, or atoms bumping into each other. So,
which is not to say that there aren't insights we can have about what's going on in the box we live in, because there's going to be a ton of those. But a baseline assumption I think the Coens make that we're going to have to live with throughout this podcast is none of it matters. It's just shit bumping into each other.
Right, right. It's like their films are always the Schrodinger's cat. And so if you take a look at someone like George R.R. Martin and the Game of Thrones.
No, I don't want to.
Well, don't take a look at him.
Gross.
Just look at the work.
Okay.
There seems to be an agenda when he is trying to say like the sins are visited upon like the innocent. Like he likes to do this. Yeah, he has this chaotic kind of thing. Anyone can die at any time. It's crazy. Ha ha ha.
His signature is actually more
but
anti-comeuppance, meaning
right.
if someone's really good and nice, you can guarantee
You're
they're gonna
die.
get fucked.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the agenda that I don't think the Coen Brothers really aren't held down by.
They believe that God is true neutral.
Yes, that is exactly right.
I mean, they don't probably believe there is a God, but that makes sense. Yeah.
So done podcast?
Done? No, because there's a lot more to say within the confines of this life.
No,
that
I'm
we
just
lead.
saying, like we don't need to do it. That's every one of their movies.
I want to talk about the fans though, because there's this repeated fan motif, which is really the only, I thought, visual strategy that they allowed to draw attention to.
What'd you think it meant?
I can only guess a couple things because I do think either I'm not doing the work right or I'm just haven't had the realization yet, or it's not as clear a symbolic system as they've come up with in other films, because I don't think it's that clear. Like I have to meet them more than halfway when I say, I don't know, it's about how life is crazy and spirals out of control, so these people are looking at something spirally. And the only reason I come to that conclusion is the final shot of the film, which must matter because it's very unique and it's the final shot, is Laurent Vasseur, as he dies, is staring up at the underside of the sink in the bathroom, and he's looking at a circular fixture that basically looks exactly like a fan. It's a central thing with spokes, but it's not turning because it's just a valve.
Right. I think that's more about spiraling out of control. That shot.
I thought it was
I don't
like
think fans are that.
The fan, as long as the fan is moving, that's life. Life just goes and goes and goes. It only stops when you die. So at the moment of his death, he gets to see a still fan.
Yeah, that's
what you thought?
That I didn't think about that. I didn't connect that the sinkhole and the fan as symbolic imagery.
That's what I'm saying. It's a stretch.
I just was arguing that it's not about fans in this movie are not about spiraling. They're about two things to me. One is like it's kind of lame, but like the winds of change. The idea that like if we are to believe that atoms are just bumping into each other, there is this strange force, this centrifugal force that's pushing, aka wind, pushing molecules in a certain direction. So I thought it was more a meditation on directionality and how it's a kind of unilateral movement. Like there's only one way it can go, and that's what fans kind of do. But that does convince me that when I didn't think about the fact when it stops, that's the end of the life. Like,
well, the last shot's got to mean something.
So
like
our wheels are just
turning
turning until we die,
and it'll only stop when you die, friend. You know, that kind of thing.
That's I could believe that.
It's possible,
we and people in our audience. You tell us we overthink things too. Like this is what conversations with Michael and I are usually like. We talk about this shit until it's just like, could it be that? Could it be that? And we just keep going.
It could be a coincidence they didn't intend.
And if you just drop into one of our conversations, which some people have, like Adam Ganser's made fun of us for it, like we're talking about this thing to such an extent that
Adam, you're like a child wandering into the movie.
Donnie,
Coen Brothers reference.
But like if you like, I don't know. I think we beat it to death so that we feel like we've done due diligence. So this
you don't have
fan
to defend
stuff,
why we're doing
I'm not
the
defending
show.
it. I'm just saying that if you stop this podcast and go, these guys are full of shit, we don't necessarily believe any of these things. I'm just saying.
Oh no, I believe 90% of the things we've said. The fan thing is the first thing we've said that I think we could be way off base if we could somehow read their minds. But to add even more complexity to it, in case anyone out there has a light bulb go off and can type out their theory, another thing to note about the fan imagery is we always see it from below, someone looking up at a fan while they're thinking.
Right.
Except one time. When Marty gets shot, we get the classic soul rising from the body looking down shot, and it ends by getting just above the fan level, and the fan blades cut the screen off a couple times. Just like Last Guy to Wear a Hitler Stash, one of my favorite sketches we ever made.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Adam directed that, and he stole that shot from this. So
yeah, that's great.
But I mean, that's a classic noir shot, the fan blades going by the camera.
Right.
But my point being, it's a classic, like, I don't know, I was like, if you're under the fan, you're alive, and when you pass the fan threshold, that's dying. But then it's complicated by the fact that in retrospect, Marty's not even dead. In that moment, he's not really dead.
Right.
So, I don't know. The fans threw me for a loop.
Yeah, I think that one, I don't know. I think there's something about having a foreground fan obscuring, because it doesn't obscure the entire frame. It obscures the part of the frame that he occupies.
Yeah.
So to me, that was just a gentle nod to like his life is ending.
It's like laying a blanket over a body.
So it's like it's like a shutter that is slowly slowing down and stuttering out of existence. That's my only take on that.
And of course, as we said, I'm sure some of their decisions are, we thought it looked and felt right and we did it. We don't have to, it doesn't have to tie into a thing.
No, it doesn't. They're just like, that's a cool shot.
But
also,
I don't know. When they have 3 prolonged fan shots in one movie,
Right.
I tend to believe it's something. It meant something
it means,
to them.
yeah.
Chekhov's fan.
It's Chekhov's
You
fan.
met Chekhov's biggest fan? She's real creepy.
She's real creepy. She just goes off at any time.
Yeah. In case you want to read ahead, I just see in my notes that Dashiell Hammett book is called Red Harvest. And Miller's Crossing's episode 3. So we'll be talking about Miller's Crossing, which is a loose adaptation of Red Harvest by Dashiell Hammett.
Which is kind of interesting because the working title of Star Wars was
Blue Harvest.
What's that?
Together they are Purple Harvest.
Purple Harvest.
A noir Star Wars movie.
That's going to be our first working title.
Where they have to get the Maltese Millennium Falcon. It's perfect.
We're nerds.
We're nerds. I am scrolling through my notes as far as diegesis and pedagogy are concerned, just to make sure I have nothing else. But then we could probably move on to Howdy Doodat. I do like how Same Old Song is, the third use of Same Old Song is credits.
Yeah.
Which I think, again, just hammers home. That's like, this is the anthem of this movie. And we only had to pay for rights to one song for our indie movie.
Right. Which is kind of weird that they had like the blooper reel during the credits.
Have you ever seen Life with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy? Bernie Mac?
No.
It's fucking really good, dude. It's underrated. People have forgotten about it, but it's great. I just watched it again. Eddie Murphy is next level star talent. It's so sad that he only makes bad movies now because he's so good.
Well, I don't think I don't know if he's going to return. He only made those like the last 8 years of his career.
Right.
He made solid movies.
Life is earlier and it's really good. I recommend watching it. And it has the funniest blooper reel I've ever seen in any movie. In
funnier
the end
than
credits,
Will Ferrell in Eastbound and Down.
Yes.
Wow.
I would say, because
now I gotta watch it.
The whole blooper reel, Eddie Murphy's just bringing the laughs and fucking ad-libbing and ruining everyone. Like no one can stand up to how good his ad-libs are.
I love it.
Yeah, so let's go back to Coen Brothers movies. But
yeah, sure.
I think that's everything. In future, especially in the next episode, which will be Raising Arizona, I want to do like quote roundups also. This one, this is a light dialogue movie, so I don't have that many.
No.
But Raising Arizona is like, we have to have a section where we just say, remember this, remember this. So fucking good. But I did want to talk about a couple quotes. Like you alluded to earlier, let's break down that opening narration. Now, opening narration is something I have a knee-jerk reaction against in most films, and the Coens fucking love it.
Yeah, well, it's because they don't use it for exposition necessarily. They like weave their exposition with like here, because they do it in No Country as well with Tommy Lee Jones. Hudsucker.
They love to open with basically a tone poem that is a montage because they are the kings of the montage.
Yeah,
and a tone poem that basically establishes the feel of the universe.
Right. I think that it's like to peek inside a perspective. So it's to see not here's a world and here's how we want you to think about it. So a voiceover is super efficient at doing that because you get visuals of what the world looks like and you get the tone from the way in which they're interpreting the world.
Yeah.
That's all.
So what did you get from that monologue? It's again, the world's full of complainers, but the fact is there's no guarantees. I don't care if you're president or man of the year. Stuff can go wrong. You know, in Russia, they got it all worked out so everyone pulls for each other. But that's the theory anyway. I don't know about Russia. I know about Texas. And then it's cut to action.
To me, the text is that she is talking about the movie and the fact that, like we've alluded to a bunch of times, how there's sin invites sin kind of stuff. But I think that the subtext is that she does, like, I love the line about, like, I don't know about Russia, I know about Texas.
Yeah.
Because she it's about what you don't know and what you aren't in control of. And the fact that she survives is because she's aware of that, versus like, a figure like Lauren, who assumes that he would know about this. Like, maybe he doesn't know about Russia, but he knows about, like, this is how you do crime.
Yeah. He
dies. She survives because has that liquidity, that ability to be malleable.
Yeah.
She can change, and in fact, she's one of the only. I mean, obviously, Ray and Abby both kind of go through a change, especially in that bedroom scene. But she's the one who actually survives, I think, because while her motivation stays the same, she is open to new things occurring all the time. Like, she's like, I think it's him, when on the phone call, even though she's been told that it's not. There's like this flexibility that she has that I think allows her a little bit of
right, because she says to Maurice, I think Ray killed Marty. Then she gets a phone call and says I think it's Marty.
Yeah, exactly.
So she's still open to, maybe I could be wrong, I don't know what's going on. Yeah.
Exactly. And versus everyone else who's like a snap judgment of, this is what's going on, and this is who it is.
She's the only adaptable one. That could be why she survives.
And I think Russia and socialism is just a nod to the idea of whether you're an individual, whether you go it alone and are selfish, or you're ultimately altruistic, the results can be the same because the world is chaos.
And the question of, do people naturally want to help other people or not help other people?
Yeah, that's true.
And I think it's echoed when he says later, I can't believe it took us so long to say this, by the way, but the private detective part was written for Emmett Walsh, and he's so fucking good. Can we just say, like, how good the character is?
Yeah.
Because he's the villain that you hate all the more because he fears nothing. He thinks everything you take seriously is funny. He doesn't give a fuck, and he laughs like a hyena at everything.
Yeah.
It's so good. One of my favorite scenes that makes you, like, loathe him and fear him is...
In the car?
No, when Marty's trying to threaten him, he says, in Greece, he says, like, you're treating this really lightly that my wife is cheating on me. It's pissing me off. In Greece, they'd behead the messenger who brought the bad news.
Right.
And he goes, that don't make much sense. And he goes, oh, no? I think it made him feel better. And he goes, well, glad I don't live in Greece. Like, give me my money.
Yeah, like, doesn't change what this is.
Right. And at the end, when he's leaving, he goes... if you need me, you know what rock I'll be scuttling out from under. Call me if you ever want to chop my head off. I can always crawl around without it. And then just laughs and laughs as he walks away.
Right, which is so...
Yeah, his laughter is so grating and terrifying.
It's like
and
a jackal's laugh.
But similarly, when he's being hired to do the crime, I think it's definitely a callback to the opening monologue when the private detective says... The guy says, Julian Marty says... $10,000 if you kill him. Well, first of all, this is just a good turn of phrase. He goes, I have a job for you. And the private eye says, well, if it's legal and the money's right, I'll do it. Well, it's not strictly legal. Well, if the money's right, I'll do it. And he goes,
that just increases the money, but I'll still do it.
And he says, I want you to kill these two people. And he goes, how much? And he says, $10,000. And his response is to become like really reverent and stare into space and go, in Russia, they only make 50 cents a day. So I think that's the other chamber of that observation is like whether the movie believes it or not, or whether the Coens believe it or not, the private detective certainly believes that you can live in a world where people help each other and everyone's poor, or there can be winners and losers, or you can't have it both ways. And I think he'd rather live in a world of predators and prey than live in a world where everyone's poor and pulls for each other.
I think that's the nihilistic hint there, is that the Coen Brothers believe, and as we kind of all understand, we do live in a world where it's both.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're just showing us the awful remainder of the realization that reality is imperfect. It's not that it should be one way or another. It's just literally it's being a mirror. It's reflect what life is and be still. Like that's what they're doing.
Cool.
No?
Should we go on to How'd He Do That?
How'd he do that?
How'd he do that? Fun facts, trivia, and behind the scenes information. What do you got?
Just because we were talking about Walsh, there's one thing I read that I didn't know, but I think is amazing, So Joel is the guy who directs most of the stuff. Ethan is the producer. They obviously are two-headed Hydra, so they can do what they fucking. They both direct and produce, but they just decided that that's kind of how it works.
Multiple actors have told the great on-set story where they'll do a take and they'll try something with it. Maybe that was different than rehearsal, maybe.
Yeah, oh brother.
And Joel will look at Ethan or Ethan will look at Joel and they'll just go, Ethan, and the other one will go, I know. And then they'll both come together and like in unison essentially just be like, remember what we did in rehearsal? It was this, this, and this. Do that.
As George Clooney said,
they don't collaborate.
Direction from the Coen Brothers isn't like going for a thing. It's just they're polite. You're politely asked to do it as it was done in rehearsal. Because I think they fervently believe that casting is 99.9% of the job for at least the roles.
And they're a bit... they strike me as pretty friendly compared to Kubrick is equally visionary, but he's a fucking lunatic asshole. Yeah. And that tends to happen. Even Hitchcock's a fucking lunatic. They seem like kind auteurs, which is such a weird combo. Like kind dictators, because their only rule is do it exactly like I said. I'm not going to flip out like David O. Russell. We're not going to fire you like other directors I could name, but just do it exactly like we said.
Yeah. I think it comes down to they're meticulously planned, even more so than I think we give most directors credit. I think all great directors are meticulously planned. Nolan, Tarantino, Hitchcock, all
But I would say 99% of those...
they're so planned.
99% of those directors... Except that a part of the collaboration is the acting piece is organic and the actor can bring choices that could change it and take it to a new place. That works for many, many, many films. That's not how the Coens roll. They just don't do that.
I think they're at their best when they don't do it. So I'm glad you told that anecdote because here it's funny that in their freshman kind of jump into movie making, they had some clash with Emmett Walsh. So Joel Coen had trouble convincing him to pick up his hat off the ground in the ending scene. And Walsh had a laundry list of reasons why that, like, my character wouldn't do that.
In the heat of this moment, why would I
care?
Hat?
And the Coen brothers tried and tried and tried to debate it on that merit, which is kind of what you do when you direct. Is that if you really want something as a director and you have an actor who really wants something as a role player, you kind of do a tete-a-tete, like, here's the logical reasons. And
the philosophy behind that is the belief that the actor is it's going to feel forced most likely unless they can wrap their head around why they're doing
You're trying to convince someone. I mean,
you're trying to convince them that the worldview that you want the character to have is valid, and they need to be convinced. It hurts their acting often if they don't understand or believe it.
And that's the nature of craft. Is that it's almost always best if it's unified vision. And so there's obviously in every movie there's kind of a clash. And there's a derisive nature of who gets creative control. And director, that's why we have, directors, God kind of theories, is because it's just like a lot of actors get a lot of continuous work if they have the belief structure where it's like, no, I'm whatever you want, man. A lot of the actors I work with, they're just like, I'm not like ending world hunger here. I'm just here to play a role and get paid and do my craft really well.
Right, but
you use me as a vessel essentially.
But
to tell your
still
story.
say almost every director that I've ever worked with would say, "Okay, we got 3 takes of this line. Why don't you give me 3 different equally valid things you might do? Yep. And in editing, I'll see what I like." The Coens go, "No, you're a goddamn meat puppet. In rehearsal, we tried 3 things, and we told you it's number 2. Yeah. Now give us 3 takes of number 2. Exactly that."
So Walsh, it got to the point where it got like not out of hand. They were just like, we have reached an impasse, and this is the only time I've ever heard the Coen brothers ever say this. Which the Coens asked
Do
Walsh,
it because we said so?
"Will you just please humor me?" To which Walsh replied, "I'm humoring you by doing the whole fucking movie."
Whoa.
And I just love that analogy of it's like, okay, so that...
Was he bigger than them at this time? Is he a big star?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I love him. I didn't know he ever had a huge career,
This is their freshman...
Right, they're nobodies.
1.5 million.
Yeah.
Like, your fucking movie.
And it's funny because Frances McDormand, of course, just won an Oscar. But at the time,
She's roommates with Holly Hunter.
Right, and M. Emmett Walsh is the only person in the movie that is a name. In fact, they wrote that role for him and courted him for it.
Yeah.
So he is like the Bruce Willis on the Die Hard of this set, where he's like, hey, I'm the whole movie, man.
Yeah. Are you going to get a different John McClane?
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, Holly Hunter was doing, because they both, I think, went to Tisch or NYU.
They were roommates, and Holly Hunter turned down the role of Abby.
Because she was in a play at the time and said, this is Frances McDormand's first role. And they actually thought they were going to do, like, Holly Hunter was going to be the person.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy about how, like, talk about, like, the cosmos and its chaos and, like, atoms bumping into each other. Frances McDormand is married.
Right. To Joel or Ethan?
I don't even know.
Right.
Joel, I think.
They're interchangeable.
They're interchangeable to me.
Well,
I don't care.
Like you and me. They're just a unibrain.
You don't need to know about our specific.
Frances McDormand wed one of them, making them the luckiest man in the world, whichever one it is.
But, like, the point is, it's just like, were it not for this film, I wonder if it would have been like, because then she was in Raising Arizona, then she Fargo,
but so is Holly Hunter as the lead in Raising
right.
Arizona.
So they obviously were like in love with Holly Hunter,
and
which I understand.
We see about the Coens throughout their career. They're big on building the team, and they're very loyal, which is something I love because if you follow, actually Coogler is very loyal to his cast team, his extended family. But I see a lot of directors who are like, spin the wheel, new movie, all new people. And, we have actors that we are bonded to that we love. Like, I never want to not consider Dylan Seaton for roles and shit. Yeah. So, like, if we ever get to the point where we're regularly making features, I also like that Coen vibe where you're like,
oh, they all came up with each other at UCSD. Yeah, that's crazy.
That guy's in 4 of their movies.
But
that
it's just because
in 5 of their movies.
We know each other's speeds. We know how to use each other, and, like, in the nicest way. I don't mean like use them, but I mean like we know what our strengths are and we want to play to it. And so we're going to write stories that play to their strengths. You know, like I always cast Nathan Turner as like the same guy. And I've talked to him about it all the time. It's like, we're very fast. We like to edit like a Looney Tunes. And you refuse to not take
time to act.
So anytime I need a guy to slow us down, I'm like,
it's so funny for contrast.
So Nathan.
Yeah. Speaking of, I mean, there's a lot of firsts because it's their first movie, but just knowing the future, what a fucking wonder team, as you were just saying. It's Frances McDormand's feature debut. It's Carter Burwell's first score with them, and Barry Sonnenfeld is their goddamn cinematographer.
Do you know that Carter Burwell lives like here?
Let's go. Let's interview him.
He records right next to, like, on Santa Monica and my cross street, which don't mention.
That's what I was gonna say.
But like I've seen it. It's crazy.
Nice. Well, we should try and get him to be interviewed for this podcast and score it and be best friends with us.
Right.
Other little fun facts. While Ray is driving with Marty in the back seat, the DJs on the radio say they're like, "I'm John Livesey," and coming up in an hour, it's Mike Miller with another music blog. Right. Those are the 2 sound editors.
Right.
That's their names.
They love to do shit like that.
I found out, I had no idea, it was remade in 2009 by a Chinese director, and they made it as A Woman, a Gun, and a Noodle Shop, and I want to see that now. That could be cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, let's watch it.
Adaptation. And then Holly Hunter actually is in this movie. She is the comedic break. She's the voice on Maurice's answering machine that says, "My friend said you were full of shit when you said you're going to Europe. You're just fucking me and leaving me. Like, call me back, motherfucker." And then the next message is Dan Hedaya saying, "I'm blaming you for the 10,000."
Right, story in it.
So that's Holly Hunter. So
wow,
Frances and Holly, both in the movie and both in the following movie.
I want to talk a little bit about like the finished film and how it because remember the main thing about the freshman feature is distribution, because you have all the time in the world. That's why they say like sophomore albums are always like tough.
Kill Me Now, still freely available on youtube.com.
because because you have all the time in the world before the spotlight's on you to create whatever you want. So this is something that they could have taken as much time as they wanted.
But these guys don't have that problem.
Yeah,
and
they don't have that problem.
Raising Arizona is better than Blood Simple.
But everyone knows that is a thing with artists,
especially
and
in
creators.
music.
So
yeah.
that they were playing with that assumption. So the finished film was brought to L.A. and shown to major studios, and they all passed. Later that year, it was accepted into the 1984 New York Film Festival, which they already had cred with because they, went there. And then it was shown at the Toronto Film Festival, and it fucking cleaned the house. That's how they got their distribution, is they went through the festival route and just killed it. And then everyone was like, so it just tells you how fickle kind of like these guys understood. Like anytime you think like, oh man, I need to despair because the people who have the keys to the kingdom are fucking pieces of shit and they aren't going to see my worth. Well, you find the people who will see your worth, and then those people who you thought were fickle will come to your door because they'll understand what you're good at. I just thought that was a cool start of their career.
I think it's cool that in the initial trailer you mentioned that they originally used to raise funds for the movie, it featured the
Bruce Campbell
burying alive scene, and Bruce Campbell played Marty. So there's an identical shots from that sequence of Bruce Campbell
right.
all bloodied, crawling down the freeway.
That's so fucking good.
Yeah, especially in their early movies, there's a lot of Sam Raimi connections. They're good friends.
Yeah.
And that'll be fun going forward.
Sam Raimi's actually in many, like in like 3 or 4 of their films as like just a guy.
I love Sam Raimi. He didn't hold up over the long haul as well as the Coens, but he's innovative.
He's innovative. I mean, he's
good, man.
I mean, he as a filmmaker, he's up there, and people don't give him a lot of credit. He invented like styles of camera.
I was gonna say his inventiveness is why he's up there, and he's made several of my favorite movies. Quick and the Dead, as you said, A Simple Plan is phenomenal. But he's got a lot of misses lately. I don't know, man.
I mean, once he started doing the Spider-Mans and
Marvel ruins most directors I love when it sucks.
I mean, that's why they back away. I mean, Edgar Wright is like, nah, I can tell what this situation is.
I'm so glad he made that decision. Joss Whedon's like, I can't keep doing this. I'm like, that's probably smart.
I mean, that's why they're going after people like Coog, who are like kind of jump-starting their career.
Yeah.
And they're still in like, they're already in the zeitgeist, but they haven't like, you still believe there's a masterpiece left in them?
Yeah, but I hope and believe that Coogler will have the foresight to be like, I'm doing 3 Black Panthers, franchise wrapped, and I'm out. And then I'll do something not Marvel at all. Like, I want to see more
to this,
non-Marvel
Ryan,
shit.
get out, man. Get out.
You got to get out. Oh,
keep making
Fruitvale,
man.
No, Creed. I loved Creed.
Creed was good. Real good.
Creed's my favorite. Well, Black Panther's probably the most. All right, that's a different podcast,
That's a different
too.
podcast.
But Coogler's doing great. All right, I think that's this episode.
Yeah,
I want to move on.
We're gonna do Raising Arizona next because that's number 2, and that was 3 years later. It was 1987. What did I say?
This is 84.
84.
So join us in 3 years for Raising Arizona. This has been the Coen Brothers. We're just 2 mining brothers.
2 mining brothers, mining the Coen.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.